Hello, welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Matthew Lucas.
And I'm Stephen Ryan, and we post a video every week. So why not hit subscribe and the alert button so that you can keep up with our weekly adventures.
Yes, and if you've got a burning horticultural question for Stephen Ryan, do put it in the comments below and he will answer them in our Monday Shorts.
Yes, and don't forget to tell me where you're from to give context.
Yes. Now, Stephen, we are wandering through your garden.
Yes.
Where are you taking me?
Oh, well, down to the bottom of the garden where I have something of mythical importance.
Oh my goodness, well I can't wait. Let's go and have a look.
All right, let's.
All right, so this is actually a part of the garden we're not often in.
No, this is what I would grandiosely call my citrus walk.
Exhibit A.
Yes, hence citrus tree.
Oh, is that what we're looking at?
Yes, we're coming to the pointy bit of this garden, and we're going to look at a plant that has an enormously important history in lots and lots of different ways.
Well, without further ado, let us turn the camera around and have a look.
All right, let's.
Well, Stephen, what an extraordinary looking plant, and I have no idea what it is. It kind of, I know it's not, looks like an African violet.
It does rather. It's got that sort of form about it.
Yeah.
But this is the almost mythological plant called Mandrake.
Oh.
And of course, anybody who's read or watched the movies of Harry Potter will know about the screaming mandrakes that they studied in their herbology courses. Yeah. It wasn't Rowling's invention. I mean, this plant existed, and a lot of what was put into Harry Potter was part of the myth about this plant. So it's botanically known as Mandragora, Mandragora officinarum, although there's some dispute. There's bluey purple flowered ones through to sort of greeny bronzy coloured ones, and some botanists will put them in separate species, one as autumnalis and the other as officinarum. Others consider it just to be one species with quite a diverse sort of characteristics. So whichever one you fall onto the side of, well, that's up to you. I think of it as officinarum because it's flowering in high winter, and autumnalis doesn't seem to fit from my perspective. And it's in the Solanaceae family, which is, I think, one of the world's most interesting plant families because they're full of all sorts of mysterious plants, full of poisons.
Give some examples.
All right, well, you've got the Brugmansia, for instance sake, of which we've done...
And it's just over there.
Yeah, yes. We've done some work with. It was used by the South American tribes to use as an hallucinogenic drug to take them closer to their gods. Mandrake, in a sense, has had a similar history because it is quite toxic. It's got a lot of poisons in it, but like a lot of poisonous plants, in small quantities, they can sometimes be of health benefits as well.
All right, but I think let's pause on the poison bit.
Yeah.
But let's go back a bit. So, first of all, where's it from?
All right. Well, it comes from around the Mediterranean basin, basically, this particular species. There are other species that grow up in the Himalayas and in other areas of Europe. As far as I know, though, they are isolated into the Eurasian sort of area of the world.
And in Harry Potter, we saw the plants being pulled out and the bottom of it, you know, screaming.
Yeah.
Does it have that huge kind of tuberous...
Well, they do have long thong-like roots that go down into the ground, and every so often one will have, if you squint at it, the form of a human being, and this is where some of the mythology comes about. And because of the old-fashioned technique of working out what a plant can be used for by how it looks. So the signatures of plants were considered to be indicators by God to tell you that if that plant was shaped like a man's body, then it could be an aphrodisiac. If it had spotty leaves, it could be a diseased lung. You know, so there was all these different signatures that told you what the plant should be used for. So this was
all
used...
of which is nonsense.
Well, most of it is, but then sometimes, you'll be surprised how often, in fact, sometimes these plants, the chemical elements in them have turned out to be useful, and sometimes even for the thing they thought that they were going to use it for.
Okay,
so there you go.
Not nonsense.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so it's from that part of the world, Mediterranean. Has it been grown as a garden plant? I mean, it looks stunning here. We've got to unpick why it's got all this associated baggage with it, because just looking at it, looks to me like a very beautiful winter flowering plant. So what's the deal?
Yeah, well, of course, it was originally collected from the wild as a herb.
Right.
And that's where some of the mythology comes about, because the early apothecaries and others got all of these interesting mythological things around the plant which would stop other people going out and collecting it. It was like putting a trademark on it so that you couldn't go out and collect it yourself.
Right.
So
They're frightening people off, basically.
they were frightening people off. So they told you that you could only pull mandrake out of the ground by moonlight. You had to tie the tail of a black dog to the plant. You had to stop your ears with wax so that you couldn't hear, so that when the dog pulled the mandrake out of the ground, the scream wouldn't kill you.
Oh my goodness! But okay, there are so many. That is all nonsense. Goodness me!
Of course it is. I have actually dug and divided a mandrake, and I haven't gone mad.
Did it scream? Well, no. Did it scream though?
No, I didn't hear it scream, although I did it with some nervousness because I was a bit frightened I might hurt the mandrake. So, yes, so there was all this mythology behind it, and it was used for everything from an aphrodisiac to a diuretic, and in fact, I don't know quite how amorous you can be if you've got the runs because you've eaten mandrake, and it is quite poisonous, so you do have to be careful of it.
So that family also includes deadly nightshade,
Yes.
tomato, potato.
Yeah. Capsicums, eggplants,
chili.
chilies.
Yeah.
You know, so there's lots of,
Fiery, tricky plants.
yeah, it's one of those plant families that's full of all sorts of weird things. So there's lots of plants that are edible and that we grow all the time in our gardens. And then there's others that, like deadly nightshade, like the mandrake, that are quite poisonous, but one does have to consume them first. And I always have this attitude that if you're silly enough to eat something without actually working out first whether it's something you should eat, then that's called natural selection.
But of course, there are lots of plants that we grow for horticulture that are poisonous.
Yeah.
If you chose to eat them or boil them or burn the wood and inhale the smoke, you'd get very, very sick.
And in fact, in England now, plants have to be labelled with the fact that they can be harmful. And I think that's a rather risky little tunnel to go down, because there's lots of plants we don't know their toxicity. There's lots of plants that you'd have to take an enormous number of leaves and consume them to have any impact on you whatsoever. So how does one define whether a plant should be labelled as being potentially harmful? And as I said before, you've got to eat them first as a rule. And so if you're silly enough to do it, that's your own fault. So I don't believe we should be labelling plants as toxic necessarily, but what I think good nursery people and horticulturists should be doing is making sure that people are aware if something is potentially harmful, so that people are not going to let their children go grazing in the garden without some sort of supervision, that you're aware that it could be an issue if you've got pets that are inclined to chew on things, although I do tend to discourage my pets from chewing on my plants, but anyhow. So we need to be aware that, yes, there are lots of plants out there that are poisonous, but just how many of them do we have to worry about? Because daffodil bulbs are poisonous.
I was about to say daffodil bulbs, and very recently there was a case of a vicar of Britain, I think, who nearly killed himself eating daffodil bulbs for some strange reason.
He must have thought they were onions or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he obviously didn't have a very good horticultural background. And yeah, there's lots of people.
What? I mean, I in my life and in my friend circle, I've known a few people who've been hit by cars, for example.
Yeah.
I've never, ever heard of anyone in my friends circle or, you know, like 4 rings out, who has been poisoned by a plant they decided to eat in a garden.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think you do have to be sensible about these things. You know, people worry. More people are eaten by sharks. More people are hit by cars. More people are killed by cows.
And deck chairs. I kid you not. Deck chairs are a serious killer.
So I think we have to be realistic about poisonous plants. And if they're ornamental and beautiful and you're aware that they have a toxicity with them, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't grow them.
So back to the mandrake. What of it is poisonous? Is it the leaves?
Everything. Everything about mandrake is poisonous. So if you were to consume the leaves, the flowers, the berry-like fruit that it can produce, any of those things would be poisonous. And I don't know how much of it you need to consume to have an impact, but I wouldn't go down that rabbit hole.
No, well, there you go. All right, so let's look at it as a garden plant.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful. You've got it underneath a lilac, which actually starred in our species lilac.
Oh, yes.
Epic.
Yeah, it did indeed.
So it's going to get quite a bit of shade in summer.
Doesn't matter, it's dormant in summer.
Oh.
So mandrake grows through the winter, and depending on which form you've got, it will flower through the autumn, winter, or vaguely into the very early spring.
Right.
And once the warmer weather comes on, like a lot of other very sensible Mediterranean plants, they go into dormancy. So this will die down when the summer comes.
Right.
And as the summer comes on, if it's managed to produce berries, and I've only ever had it get fruit on it 1 year where I actually went over it and hand pollinated it, because I've got a couple of small ones at the back here that I got from a different source so that I'd have hopefully different genetic material. And the next fine sunny day I'm going to go over it and give it a good pollinating and see if I can get some berries on it, because they produce quite large green fruit that then turn sort of an orangey brown colour as they ripen. But unlike tomatoes, they are toxic and you don't eat them.
Now, is it fair to say that flowers like this that are very low to the ground, I mean, some of those are often pollinated by rodents, by mice and small animals.
I don't think that's the case with these. I think that mandrake is pollinated by insects that come in.
Be crawling insects.
Yeah, there could be sort of beetles and other sundry things like that that may well pollinate it. I'm not dead sure, but I just think it's just such a fabulous plant, and I want more of them, so I will be trying to produce more, because the one at the back there was actually the one I did lift and divide, because it had 2 crowns, and so I lifted the plant gently out of the ground, shook the soil away. No, it wasn't shaped like a man's body. It just had long tappy roots underneath it, and I divided it into 2 plants. So I've now got 3 of them, 2 from one clone and 1 from the other, but they don't seem to make any real effort to multiply particularly from the plant. And I actually prefer it when it's in a single crown anyway, because if you've got multiple crowns all pushed together, you lose that symmetry.
Well, the leaves get in the way of the
Yeah,
flowers.
they
like
do.
this
So,
one.
you know, to have one big plant like that, and in fact, I'll probably come late spring try and lift one of those again and move it further away so that I've got all 3 of my mandrakes nice and individual.
The flowers are glorious, absolutely glorious. It's the most incredible colour in deep midwinter.
Yep.
What a great thing. Now, yours is elevated. This
Yep.
bed is elevated. So I'm presuming it's Mediterranean and it's tuberous. It wants to be free drained.
Oh yeah, it likes a good deep soil so it can get its man-like roots down into the
Okay,
depths.
we've got it.
Yeah, and it does need good drainage. It doesn't want to be overly watered in the summer when it's dormant. So being in a raised bed, if I'm watering other things around, I'm unlikely to cause this any problems. It goes down to quite low temperatures. I know they grow it in the Chelsea Physic Garden in London. There's lots of other places that have it. The garden that I want to visit one day is the Poison Garden in England, where everything is toxic. And I remember seeing a picture of that garden. It's got skulls and crossbones on the gates and all. It does the whole bit. And somebody put on Facebook, do they have a gift shop? Which I thought was screamingly funny. I just loved it. So anyhow, so it can be grown in almost any Mediterranean style climate. So verging into the cooler, but I certainly wouldn't take mandrake to the tropics.
In your suitcase.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else we need to know about mandrake, Stephen Ryan?
I don't think so. I mean, if you can get one, and I've seen seed of it occasionally.
Well, there's the thing.
It's not that easy to get. Certainly in Australia, it's quite rare. 1 or 2 of the herb nurseries occasionally have it for sale. And doing a little bit of research on it yesterday, I went down one of those Google rabbit holes that you sometimes do, and I found somebody who was selling it here for $56 for a tiny little plant in a tube. So I should have put my prices up the last time I got a batch of them going, shouldn't I?
Yes, you should have. You should have. Well, this has been fascinating. I would never have recognized that as a mandrake. I don't know what I was thinking a mandrake would look like, but not that. It is beautiful.
Yeah,
and
it's a
in
gorgeous
winter
plant.
with these gorgeous textured leaves.
Yeah,
and this
they're
crown
almost
of
like
flowers.
sandpaper. They're wonderful. And what I want now is some of the Himalayan species to grow as well. But I don't think they've ever found their way into Australia. But there's some amazing mandrakes that come from the Himalayas. So
Well, there we go.
yeah.
Mandrake 101, so we can get our wizard on
Yes.
and
Yeah.
make some spells.
Well, and in fact, just to finish off the mythology behind this plant, a mandragora was in fact a doll that was supposedly given by Satan to sorcerers to use as a familiar.
Oh, well, Stephen, that's charming. Now, if you've got a question for Stephen Ryan, do put it in the comments below, because every Monday we have a short.
Yes, and don't forget to tell me where you're from so that I've got context when that comes about.
Yes.
And don't forget, of course, to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you press the alert button, it will remind you every week when our next video comes up.
But until then, we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye all.